Hello, and welcome back to Baby Elias's stories. We now return to The Fifth Elephant by Terry Pratchett. Part 11. The castle on the other side of the valley was much more rugged than Lady Margolota's confectionery item. Even so, the gates were wide open and didn't look as though they were often closed. The main door was tall and heavy-looking. The only thing that suggested it hadn't been ordered from the standard castle catalogue was the smaller, narrow door a few feet high, set into it. "What's that for?" said Vimes. "Even a dwarf would bump their head." "I suppose it depends on what shape you are when you go in," said Sherry darkly. The main door opened as soon as Vimes had laid his hand on the wolf's head knocker. But he was ready this time. "Good morning, Eagle," he said. "Good day, Your Excellency," said Eagle, bowing. "Eagle and Eagle send their regards, Eagle." "Thank you, Your Excellency. Since you mention it, could I put a parcel on your coach for Eagle?" "You mean the Eagle at the embassy?" "That's who I said, sir," said Eagle patiently. "He asked me if I could lend him a hand." "Yes, no problem there." "Good. It is well wrapped up, and the ith will keep it nice and fresh. Would you step this way? The master is changing at the moment." Eagle scrambled into a wide hall, one side of which was mostly fireplace, and bowed out. "Did he say what I thought he said?" said Vimes. "About the hand and ice?" "It's not what it sounds like, sir," said Sherry. "I hope so. My God, look at that damn thing." A huge red flag hung from the rafters. In the middle of it was a black wolf's head, its mouth full of stylized flashes of lightning. "Their new flag, I think," said Sherry. "I thought it was just a crest with the doubled-headed bat." "Perhaps they thought it was time for a change, sir." "Ah, Your Excellency, isn't Sybil with you?" The woman who had entered was Angua, but padded somewhat with years. She was wearing a long, loose green gown, very old-fashioned by Ankh-Morpork standards, although there are some styles that never go out of date on the right figure. She was brushing her hair as she walked across the floor. She's staying at the embassy today. We had rather a difficult journey. You would be the Baroness Seraphine von Uberwald, and you're Sam Vimes. Sybil's letters are all about you. The Baron won't be long. We were out hunting and lost track of time." "I expect it's a lot of work seeing to the horses," said Vimes politely. Seraphine's smile went strange for a moment. "Ha! Yes," she said. "Can I get Igor to fetch you a drink?" "No, thank you." She sat down on one of the overstuffed chairs and beamed at him. "You've met the new king, Your Excellency?" "This morning. I believe he's having trouble." "What makes you think that?" said Vimes. Seraphine looked startled. "I thought everyone knew." "Well, I've hardly been here 5 minutes," said Vimes. "I probably don't count as everyone." Now he was pleased to note she looked puzzled. Now he was pleased to note. She looked puzzled. We just heard there was some problem, she said. Oh, well, a new king, a coronation to organize. A few problems are bound to occur, he said. Well, he thought, so this is diplomacy. It's like lying, only to a better class of people. Yes, of course. Angua is well, said Vimes. Are you sure you won't have a drink? Said Seraphine quickly, standing up. Ah, here is my husband. The Baron entered the room like a whirlwind that had swept up several dogs. They bounded ahead of him and danced around him. Hello, hello, he boomed. Vimes looked at an enormous man. Not fat, not tall, just built to perhaps 1/10 over scale. He didn't so much have a face with a beard as a beard with, peeking over the top in that narrow gap between the mustache and the eyebrows, small remnants of face. He bore down on Vimes in a cloud of leaping bodies, hair and smell of old carpets. Vimes was ready for the handshake when it came, but even so had to grimace as his bones were ground together. Good of you to come, hey? Heard so much about you. But not enough, Vimes thought. He wondered if he'd ever have the use of his hand again. It was still being gripped. The dogs had transferred their attention to him. He was being sniffed. Greatest respect for Ankh-Morpork, hey? Said the Baron. Good, said Vimes. Blood was getting no further than his wrist. Have seat, the Baron barked. Vimes had been trying to avoid the word, but that was exactly how the man spoke, in short, sharp sentences, every one an exclamation. He was herded towards a chair. Then the Baron let go of his hand and flung himself onto the huge carpet, the excited dogs piling on top of him. Seraphine made a noise somewhere between a growl and the tch of wifely disapproval. Obediently, the Baron pushed the dogs aside and flung himself into a chair. You'll have to take us as you find us, said Seraphine, smiling with her mouth alone. This has always been a very informal household. It's a very nice place, said Vimes weakly, staring around the enormous room. Trophy heads lined the walls, but at least there were no trolls, no weapons either. There were no spears, no rusty old swords, not even a broken bow, which was practically against the law of castle furnishing. He stared at the wall again, and then at the carving over the fireplace, and then his gaze traveled down. One of the dogs, and Vimes had to be clear about this, he was using the term dogs merely because they were indoors, and that was a place where the word wolf was not usually encountered, was watching him. He'd never seen such an appraising look on a creature's face. It was weighing him up. There was something familiar about the pale gold hair that was a sort of mane. In fact, it looked quite like Angua, but heavier set. And there was another difference, which was small yet horribly significant. Like Angua, it had this sense of movement stilled, but whereas Angua always looked as if she was poised to flee, this one looked poised to leap. The embassy is to your liking. We owned it, you know, before we sold it to Lord Veterinary, said Vimes, reluctantly taking his eyes off the wolf. Of course, your people made a lot of changes, she went on. We've made a few more, said Vimes, recalling all those patches of shiny woodwork where the hunting trophies had been removed. I must say I was really impressed with the bathroom. I'm sorry. There had been almost a yelp from the Baron. Seraphine was glaring at her husband. Yes, she said sharply. I gather interesting things have been done. You're so lucky to have the thermal springs, said Vimes. And this was diplomacy too, he thought, when you let your mouth chatter away while you watched people's eyes. It's just like being a copper. Sybil wants to go to take the waters at Bad Heezy's bad... Behind him he heard a faint growl from the Baron and saw the look of annoyance flash across Seraphine's face. I'm saying the wrong thing, he said innocently. My husband is a little unwell at the moment, said Seraphine in the special wife voice which Vimes recognized as meaning, he thinks he's fine right now, but just you wait until I get him alone. I suppose I'd better present my credentials, said Vimes, pulling out the letter. Seraphine reached across quickly and took it from his hand. I shall read it, she said, smiling sweetly. Of course, it's a mere formality. Everyone's heard of Commander Vimes. I mean no offense, of course. But we were a little surprised when the patrician, Lord Veterinary, said Vimes helpfully, putting a slight stress on the first syllable and hearing the growl on cue. Yes, indeed, said that you would be coming. We were expecting one of the more experienced diplomats. Oh, I can hand around the thin cucumber sandwiches like anything, said Vimes. And if you want little golden balls of chocolate piled up in a heap, I'm your man. She gave him a slow blank stare. Your pardon, your excellency, she said. More Borgian is not my first language, and I fear we may have inadvertently misled one another. I gather that you are, in real life, a policeman? In real life, yes, said Vimes. We've always been against the police force in Bionk, said the Baroness. We feel it interferes with the liberties of the individual. Well, I have certainly heard that argument advanced, said Vimes. Of course, it depends on whether the individual you are thinking of is yourself or the one climbing out of the bathroom, he noted the grimace, window with the family silver in a sack. Happily, security has never been a problem for us, said Seraphine. I'm not surprised, said Vimes. I mean, because of all the walls and gates and things. I do hope you will bring Sybil to the reception this evening, but I see that we are keeping you, and I know you must have much to do. Igor will show you out. Yes, mistress, said Igor behind Vimes. Vimes could feel the river of fury building up behind the levees of his mind. I'll tell Sergeant Angua you asked after her, he said, standing up. Indeed, said Seraphine. But right now, I'm looking forward to a really relaxing bath, said Vimes, and watched with satisfaction as both the Baron and his wife flinched. Good day to you. Sherry marched along beside him across the hallway. Don't say a word until we're out of here, hissed Vimes. Sir? Because I want to get out of here, said Vimes. Several of the dogs had followed them out. They weren't growling. They hadn't bared their teeth, but they were carrying themselves with rather more purpose than Vimes had come to associate with groin sniffers in general. I've put the parcel in the coach, Your Excellency, said Igor, opening the coach door and knuckling his forehead. I'll be sure to give it to Igor, said Vimes. Oh, not to Igor, sir. This is for Eagle. Oh, right. Vimes looked out of the windows as the horses trotted away. The golden-haired wolf had come to the steps and was watching him leave. He sat back as the coach rumbled out of the castle and closed his eyes. Sherry was wise enough to remain silent. "No weapons on the walls. Did you notice?" he said after a while. His eyes were still shut, as if he was looking at a picture on the back of them. "Most castles like that have the things hanging all over the place." "Well, they are werewolves, sir." "Does Angua ever talk about her parents?" "No, sir." "They didn't want to talk about her, that's certain." Vimes opened his eyes. "Dwarves," he said. "I've always got on with dwarves and werewolves. Well, never had a problem with werewolves. So why is the only person who hasn't tried to blow me out this morning the blood-sucking vampire?" "I don't know, sir." "Big fireplace they had." "Werewolves like to sleep in front of the fire at night, sir," said Sherry. "The Baron certainly didn't seem comfortable in the chair. I spotted that. And what was the motto carved into that great big mantelpiece? Homo homini lupus, sir," said Sherry. "It means every man is a wolf to another man." "Ha! Why haven't I promoted you, Sherry?" "Because I get embarrassed about shouting at other people, sir." "Sir, did you notice the strange thing about the trophies they had on the wall?" Vimes shut his eyes again. "Stag, bears, some kind of mountain lion. What are you asking me, Corporal?" "And did you notice something just below them?" "Let's see. I think there was just space below them." "Yes, sir, with 3 hooks in it. You could just make them out." Vimes hesitated. "Do you mean," he said carefully, 3 hooks that might have had trophies hanging from them until they were removed?" "Very much that sort of hook, sir. Yes, only perhaps the heads haven't been hung up yet." "Troll heads?" "Who knows, sir?" The coach entered the town. "Sherry, have you still got that silver chainmail vest you used to have?" No, sir. I stopped wearing it because it seemed a bit disloyal to Angua, sir. Why?" "Just passing a thought." "Just a passing thought. Oh, ye gods. Is that Eagle's parcel under the seat?" "I think so, sir. But look, I know about eagles. If that's a real hand, the original owner hasn't got a use for it, believe me."
"What? He cuts bits off dead people?"
"Better than live people, sir."
"I know what I mean."
"Sir, it's considered good manners if one of the eagles has helped you to put it in your will that they can help themselves to any parts that might help someone else. They never ask for any money. People just carry little cards. They're very respected in Uberwald. Very good men with a scalpel and a needle. It's a kind of vocation, really."
"But they're covered in scars and stitches."
"They won't do to anyone else what they're not prepared to try on themselves." Vimes decided to explore the full horror of this. It took his mind off the missing trophies.
Are there any eaglerenas? Eaglerettes?"
"Well, any eagle is considered a good catch for a young lady."
"Is he?"
"And their daughters tend to be very attractive."
"Eyes at the same height, that sort of thing?"
"Oh, yes." But the door, when it was finally opened in response to impatient knocking, revealed not the switchback features of Eagle, but the business end of Detritus's bow, which was marginally worse.
"It's us, Sergeant,"
said Vimes. The crossbow was removed, and the door opened further.
"Sorry, sir, but you said I was to be on guard,"
said Detritus.
"There's no need to. Eagle's been hurt, sir."
Igor was sitting in the huge kitchen, a bandage round his head. Lady Sybil was fussing over him. I went to look for him a couple of hours ago, and there he was, flat on the snow, she said. She leaned closer to Sam Vimes. He doesn't remember very much. Can you recall what you were doing, old chap? Said Vimes, sitting down. Igor gave him a bleary look. Well, sir, I went out to unpack the food stuff from the other coach, and I just got hold of something, and then all the lights went out, sir. I reckon I must have slipped. Or someone hit you. Igor shrugged. For a moment, both of his shoulders were at the same level. There's nothing on the coach worth stealing, said Lady Sybil. Not unless someone was dying for a knuckle sandwich, said Vimes. Was anything taken? I checked everything against the list her ladyship gave me, sir, said Detritus, meeting Vimes's gaze. There wasn't anything missing, sir. I'll just go and take a look for myself, said Vimes. When they were outside, he walked over to the coach and looked at the snow around it. The cobbles were visible here and there. Then he looked up at the grating. All right, Detritus, he said. Talk to me. Just a feeling, sir, rumbled the troll. I know Fick is my middle name. I didn't know you had a first name, Sergeant. I don't think this was one of them accidents that happens by accident. He might have fallen off the coach when he was unloading it, said Vimes. And I might be the fairy Clinkerbell, sir. Vimes was impressed. This was low temperature thinking from Detritus. The street doors is open, said Detritus. I reckon Igor disturbed someone who was pinching stuff. But you said nothing was missing. Maybe the thief took fright, sir. What, at seeing Igor? Could be. Vimes looked at the bags and boxes. Then he looked again. Things had been thrown down any old how. That wasn't how you unpacked a coach, unless you were looking for something in a real hurry. Who'd go to these lengths to steal food? Nothing was missing. He rubbed his chin. Who packed the coach, Detritus? Dunno, sir. I think her ladyship just ordered a lot of stuff. And we left in a bit of a rush, too. Vimes stopped. Best to leave it there. He had an idea, but... well, where was the evidence? You could say nothing that should have been there was missing, so what must have been taken was something that shouldn't have been there. No, for now it was just something to remember. They walked into the hall, and Vimes's eye fell on a pile of cards on a table by the door. There's been a lot of visitors, said Detritus. Vimes took a handful of cards. Some of them had gold edging. Them diplomatics all you want? Them diplomatics all want you to come for drinky poos and stories about chickens, the troll added helpfully. Cocktails, I think you'll find, said Vimes, reading through the pasteboards. Clatch, Muntab, Genua, Lancer. Lancer? It's a kingdom you could spit across. They've got an embassy here? No, sir. Mostly they've got a letterbox. Will we all fit in? They've rented a house for their coronation, sir. Vimes dropped the invitations back onto the table. I don't think I can face any of this stuff, he said. A man can only drink so much fruit juice and listen to so many bad jokes. Where's the nearest Clacks Tower, Detritus? About 15 miles hubward, sir. I'd like to find out what's going on back home. I think that this afternoon Lady Sybil and I will have a nice quiet ride in the country. It'll take her mind off things. And then, he thought, I'll wait until midnight, see? And it's still only lunchtime. In the end, Vimes took Igor as driver and guide, and the guards Tantony and the one he would forever think of as Colonesque. Skimmer still hadn't returned from whatever nefarious expedition was occupying his time, and Vimes was damned if he'd leave the embassy unguarded. Yet, another word for diplomat, Vimes mused, was spy. The only difference was that the host government knew who you were. The game was to outwit them, presumably. The sun was warm. The breeze was cold. The mountain air made every peak look as if Vimes could reach out and touch it. Outside the town, snow-covered vineyards and farms clung to slopes that in Ankh-Morpork would be called walls. But after a while, the pine forests closed in. Here and there, at a curve in the road, the river was visible far below. Up on the box, Igor was crooning a lament. Crooning a lament means singing or humming a mournful song in a soft, low, and soothing voice. Crooning a lament. He told me Igors heal very fast, said Lady Sybil. They'd have to. Mr. Skimmer said they're very gifted surgeons, Sam. Except cosmetically, perhaps. The coach slowed. Do you come up here a lot, Igor? Said Vimes. Mr. Philippe earthed to have me drive over once a week to collect Methageth Master. I'd have thought it'd be easier to have a pickup tower in Beyonk. The council are dead against it, sir. And you? I am very modern in my outlook, sir. The tower loomed quite close now. The first 20 feet or so were of stone, with narrow barred windows. Then there was a broad platform from which the main tower grew. It was a sensible arrangement. An enemy would find it hard to break in or set fire to it. There was enough storage room inside to see out a siege. And the enemy would be aware that the lads inside would have signaled for help 30 seconds after the attack began. The company had money. They were like the coaching agents in that respect. If a tower went out of action, someone would be along to ask expensive questions. There was no law here. The kind of people who turn up would be inclined to leave a message to the world that towers were not to be touched. Everyone should know this, and therefore it was odd to see that the big signal arms were stationary. The hairs rose on Vimes's neck. Stay in the carriage, Sybil, he said. Is there something wrong? I'm not sure, said Vimes, who was sure. He stepped down and nodded to Igor. I'm going to have a look inside, he said. If there is any trouble, you're to get Lady Sybil back to the embassy, all right? Vimes leaned back into the coach and, trying not to look at Sybil, lifted up one of the seats and pulled out the sword he had hidden there. Sam, she said accusingly. Sorry, dear. I thought I ought to carry a spare. There was a bell pull by the door of the tower. Vimes tugged at it and heard a clang somewhere above. When nothing else happened, he tried the door. It swung open. Hello? There was a silence. This is the what? Vimes stopped. It wasn't the watch, was it? Not out here. The badge didn't work. He was just an inquisitive, trespassing bastard. Anyone there? The room was piled high with sacks, boxes, and barrels. A wooden stairway led up to the next floor. Vimes climbed up into a combined bedroom and mess room. There were only 2 bunks, their covers pulled back. A chair was on the floor. A meal was on the table, knife and fork laid down carefully. On the stove, something had boiled dry in an iron pot. Vimes opened the firebox door, and there was a whoomph as the in-rushing air rekindled the charred wood. And from above, the chink of metal. He looked at the ladder and the trap door to the next floor. Anyone climbing it would be presenting their head at a convenient height for a blade or a boot. "Tricky, isn't it, Your Grace?" said someone above him. "You'd better come up. Inigo?" "It's safe enough, Your Grace. There's only me here. That counts as safe, does it?" Vimes climbed the ladder. Inigo was sitting at a table, leafing through a stack of papers. "Where's the crew?" "That, Your Grace," said Inigo, "is one of the mysteries." "And the others are?" Inigo nodded towards the steps leading upwards. "See for yourself." The controls for the arms had been comprehensively smashed. Lathes and bits of wire dangled forlornly from their complex framework. Several hours of repair work for skilled men, I'd say, said Inigo as Vimes returned. "What happened here, Inigo?" "I would say the men who lived here were forced to leave, in some disorder. But it's a fortified tower, so they have to cut firewood. Oh, the company has rules. And then they put 3 young men in some lonely tower for weeks at a time, and they expect them to act like clockwork people. See the trapdoor up to the controls? That should be locked at all times. Now, you, Your Grace, and myself as well, because we are bastards," Vimes supplied. "Well, yes. We'd have devised a system that meant the clacks couldn't even be operated unless a trapdoor was shut, wouldn't we? Something like that, yes. And we'd have written into the rules that the presence of any visitor in the tower would, be automatically transmitted to the neighboring towers too. Probably that'd be a start. As it is, I suspect that any harmless-looking visitor with a nice fresh apple pie for the lads would be warmly welcomed," sighed Inigo. "They do 2-month shifts. Nothing to look at but trees. No blood. No blood. Not much sign of a struggle," said Vimes. "Have you checked outside?" "There should be a horse in the stable. It's gone. We're more or less on the rock here. There's wolf tracks, but there's wolf tracks everywhere around here. And the wind's blown the snow. They've gone, Your Grace." "Are you sure the men let someone in through the door?" said Vimes. "Anyone who could land on the platform could be in one of these windows in an instant. A vampire? It's a thought, isn't it? There's no blood around. It's a shame to waste good food," said Vimes. "Think of those poor starving children in Muntab. What are these?" He pulled a box from under the lower bunk. Inside it were several tubes about a foot long, open at one end. "Badger and normal, Ankh Morpork," he read aloud. "Mortar flare. Red. Light fuse. Do not place in mouth." "It's a firework, Mr. Skimmer. I've seen them on ships." Ah, there was something. Inigo leafed through the book on the table. "They could send up an emergency flare if there was a big problem. Yes, the tower nearest Ankh-Morpork will send out a couple of men, and a bigger squad comes up from the depot down on the plains. They take a down tower very seriously. Yes, well, it could cost them money, said Vimes, peering into the mouth of the mortar. We need this tower working, Inigo. I don't like being stuck out here. The roads aren't too bad yet. They could be here by tomorrow evening. I'm sure you shouldn't do that, sir. Vimes had pulled the mortar out of its tube. He looked at Inigo quizzically. They won't go off until you light the charge in the base, he said. They're safe, and they'd make a stupid weapon, 'cause you can't aim them worth a damn, and they're only made of cardboard in any case. Come on, let's get it on the roof. Not until dark, Your Grace. That way, 2 or 3 towers on each side will see it, not just the closest. But if the closest towers are watching, they'll certainly see. We don't know that there is anyone there to watch, sir. Perhaps what happened here has happened there too, Good grief. You don't think? No, I don't think, sir. I am a civil servant. I advise other people. Then they think. My advice is that an hour or 2 won't hurt, sir. My advice is that you return with Lady Sybil now, sir. I will send up a flare as soon as it's dark and make my way back to the embassy. Hold on. I am commander in... Not here, Your Grace. Remember? Here you are a civilian in the way. I'll be safe enough. The crew weren't. They weren't me. For the sake of Lady Sybil, Your Grace, I advise you to leave now. Vimes hesitated, hating the fact that Inigo was not only right, but was, despite his claim to mindlessness, doing the thinking that he should be doing. He was supposed to be out for an afternoon's drive with his wife, for heaven's sake. Well, all right. Just one thing, though. Why are you here? The last time Sleeps was seen, he was on his way up here with a message. And I am right in thinking that your Mr. Sleeps was not exactly the kind of diplomat that hands around the cucumber sandwiches. Inigo smiled thinly. That's right, sir. He was the other sort. Your sort. And now go, Your Grace. The sun will be setting soon. Corporal Nobbs, president and convenor of the Guild of Watchmen, surveyed his troops. All right, one more time, he said. What do we want? The strike meeting had been going on for some time, and it had been going on in a bar. The watchmen were already a little forgetful. Constable Ping raised his hand. A proper grievance procedure, a complaints committee, an overhaul of the promotion procedures, better crockery in the canteen, someone supplied. Freedom from unwarranted accusations of sucrose theft, said someone else. No more than 7 days straight on nights. An increase in the boots allowance. At least 3 afternoons off for grandmother's funerals per year. Not having to pay for our own pigeon feed. Another drink. The last demand met with general approval. Constable Shu got to his feet. He was still, in his spare time, organizer of the campaign for dead rights, and he knew how this sort of thing went. No, he said. You've got to get it a little simpler than that. It's got to have bounce and rhythm, like, what do we want? Dum-dee-dum-dee. When do we want it? Now. See? You need one simple demand. Let's try it again. What do we want? The watchmen looked at one another, no one quite wanting to be the first. Another drink? Someone volunteered.
Yeah,
said someone in the back.
when do we want it? Now!
Well, that one seems to have worked, said Nobby as the policemen crowded round the bar. What else are we going to need, Reg? Signs for the picket, said Constable Shoe. We've got to picket? Oh, yes. In that case, said Nobby firmly, we've got to have a big metal drum to burn our old scrap wood in while we're picking at it. Why? Said Reg. You got to stand around warming your hands over a big drum, said Nobby. That's how people know you're an official picket and not a bunch of bums. But we are a bunch of bums, Nobby. People think we are, anyway. All right, but let's be warm ones. The sun was a finger's width above the rim when Vimes's coach set off from the tower. Igor whipped the horses up. Vimes looked out of the window at the road's edge, a few feet away and several 100 feet above the river. Why so fast? He shouted. Got to be home by sunset, Igor shouted. It's traditional. The big red sun was moving through bars of cloud. Oh, let him, dear, if it gives the poor soul pleasure, said Lady Sybil, shutting the window. Now, Sam, what happened at the tower? I don't really want to worry you, Sybil. Well, now that you've got me really worried, you may as well tell me, all right? Vimes gave in and explained the little that he knew. Someone's killed them? Possibly. The same people that ambushed us back in that gorge? I don't think so. This isn't turning out to be much of a holiday, Sam. It's being unable to do anything that makes me sick, said Vimes. Back in Ankh-Morpork, well, I'd have leads, contacts, some kind of a map. Everyone here is, well, hiding something, I think. The new king thinks I'm a fool. The werewolves treated me as if I was something the cat dragged in. The only person who's been halfway civil was a vampire. Not the cat, said Sybil. What? Said Vimes, mystified. Werewolves hate cats, said Sybil. I distinctly remember that. Definitely not cat people. Ha! No, dog people. They don't like words like bath or vet either. I reckon if you threw a stick at the Baron, he'd leap out of his chair to catch it. I suppose I ought to tell you about the carpets, said Sybil, as the coach rocked around a corner. What? Isn't he house-trained? I meant the carpets in the embassy. You know I said I'd measure up for them. Well, the measurements aren't right on the first floor. I don't want to sound impatient, dear, but is this a carpet moment? Sam? Yes, dear. Just stop thinking like a husband and start listening like a copper, will you?